Fairytales? By Anna von Reitz. Now the same people who are urging you to register everything including your land and unwittingly give it away to foreign powers, and who believe in and promote a great many fairy tales themselves are accusing me of telling people fairy tales. That is, in true Cabal Satanist fashion, they are accusing me of doing what they have done. You want fairy tales? I will give you examples of the fairy tales they have promoted that have defrauded you out of the country and the wealth you are owed. That a Federal Reserve, Promissory, note, an I.O.U, actually pays anyone for anything. That the Federal Reserve has anything to do with the American Federation of States or the actual federal government, either one. That a group of British Territorial Citizens acting under conditions of deceit and calling themselves the Congress of the United States of America has acted with good faith or has any credit. That a piece of paper promising to pay you something undefined and deceitfully described as a US dollar sometime in the future as an equitable exchange for your goods and services now. That a statement is a bill. That a placenta is a human person. That the word person means corporation. That the words state, or United States mean municipal corporation of the District of Columbia. That a notice of levy is a levy. That an officer employed by a corporation is a public official. That we all knowingly and voluntarily donated our birthright and estate as Americans to the British Crown and the Roman Catholic Church. That we all volunteered to pay large percentages of our earnings, redefined as income, as Class 5 gift and estate, taxes collected as excise taxes, read that they are taxing us for the privilege of donating everything we are and everything we own to them. That we agreed to be enslaved in exchange for benefits that we pay for ourselves. That our mothers are all unwed mothers acting as informants against their own babies and that they knowingly donating their babies as wards of the territorial United States franchises operating as states of states, like the state of Ohio. That any foreign incorporated entity has any right to claim any material interest in or ownership of the flag of the United States of America, including the Title IV flag. That use of our flag and other emblems and capacities under delegated powers creates any valid material interest in those powers on the part of those entrusted to exercise them. That we all volunteered to mortgage our homes and land for the benefit of foreign corporations. That we volunteered to pay property taxes for the privilege of living on our donated estates. That any license is required to get married, have a dog, drive a car, practice law or practice medicine. That the federal government is composed of three branches consisting of executive, legislative and judicial functions, when in fact it is composed of three actual and separate branches, federal, territorial, and municipal. That a Scottish commercial corporation franchise doing business as the State of Ohio is the same as an American company doing business as the State of Ohio. That our actual government is supposed to be run by political lobbyists. That we voluntarily abandon any part of ownership or control of our DNA in the process of being born, living, or dying. Hint: they claim to own you and your DNA. That's why when you bring proof of your claim of life you have to seal it in blood and the DNA has to match the DNA of the placenta these crooks seized upon and claimed was an abandoned human person and was the actual owner of your good name and estate. After the placenta dies they create an infant decedent estate for it, claim that you died at the hospital, and that big chain of gross lies and fairy tales alienates you from your name and identity. From then on, you are working for your own dead placenta's estate and the perpetrators of all these fairy tales are claiming to be the beneficiaries of your name and estate. Still want to talk about fairy tales? That the American Civil War was a war. That the American Civil War was a war between the states. It was actually a mercenary conflict between federal states of states and didn't actually involve the states at all. That the territorial government is the federal government. It's actually a part of the federal government and can be called federal as a result, but it is not the federal branch of the federal government which has other powers that the territorial government was never authorized to exercise. That the reconstruction of the federal states of states was ever completed. That the American people were ever given any full disclosure about any of this. That a national debt of $21 trillion can exist in a debt-credit currency system. Every transaction in such a system is self-canceling with a net zero result. That a U.S. citizen is the same as an American citizen. That such entities as sovereign citizens and private citizens can exist. Both descriptions are oxymorons. Nobody can be in sovereign or private capacity and act as a citizen at the same time. These concepts are more fanciful than unicorns. Still want to talk about telling us fairy tales? That peacekeeping officials and peacekeeping officers are the same as law enforcement officers. That American railroads are American anymore. The French-run Grand Army of the Republic took over de facto control of the American railroads beginning in 1863, and they and their successors have run the American railroads into the ground and mismanaged them ever since. The same players have repeatedly bankrupted the United States Postal Service. That American media is American. All the major media sources and outlets are owned by foreign conglomerates who censor and limit what passes as news in this country by making sure that every news story gets fed through one of two, also foreign-owned, wire services, the AP and Reuters. And all this is overseen by foreigners, too. That the U.S. military is equivalent to the American armed forces and that either one of them are American, though they are largely staffed by Americans. The Department of Defense is a subcontractor of the British Territorial Government and the DoD is a subcontractor of the municipal government run by the Holy See, and neither one are American or necessarily loyal to American interests. That the Department of Justice is the same as the DOJ and that either one of them are American. Same story as above. That such a thing as a United States Treasury exists. No such thing since 1924. The Federal Reserve has served that function, basically as a giant securities fraud and racketeering and money laundering and kickback operation imported by the usual suspects, the British Territorial United States, Britain, and the Municipal United States, Holy See. The United States of America Treasury exists as a giant slush fund account, part of which is used for commodity and currency price fixing and rigging of markets under the control of the Municipal Office of the President of the United States and the United States Secretary of the Treasury, who isn't functioning as an American nor as a U.S. citizen. Stephen T. Mnuchin is an Interpol officer and had to relinquish his citizenship in favor of what? Chances are he is a world citizen, and a French or Belgian or Israeli dual citizen in private life, but one thing is sure, he has nothing to do with us, beyond being one of two men in charge of our accounts, their use, investment, and yes, abuse. That Americans can just stay asleep and do nothing about this situation and trust these charlatans on our shores and it will all be fine. Nothing could be farther from the truth. I could go on for probably 2 to 3 hours revisiting the lies and fairy tales these con artists have told us, but what really matters is the truth. We have been misrepresented, mischaracterized, duped and defrauded by our own employees, lied to by pros, betrayed by purported allies, sold down the river by political lobbyists pretending to occupy public offices, propagandized by foreign media, fed half-truths and horse hooey as civics and history, been robbed blind, suffered identity theft. Indebted under false pretenses, and horrifically deceived and abused by people and institutions that in fact owe us good faith service. And that, unfortunately, is no fairy tale. Please hit subscribe, like, share, embed, and get ready for many more Anna von Reitz videos.